Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 FM. I'm Paul Kretschmer. Recently, the leadership in the Democratic caucus of the General Assembly House held a news conference to talk about some of their plans for the upcoming session in 2021. Here, first of all, is House Speaker-designate Matt Ritter of Hartford.
The purpose of today is really twofold. Number one, the Majority Leader, Jason Rojas, and I wanted to formally announce that the chairman of the General Law Committee will remain and continue to be Mike D'Agostino behind me of Hamden. Mike has been chair now for 4 years, going on his third term as chair. And the second part of this is to talk about a lot of the work that Mike has done, that our other committees have done in finance and judiciary, and talk about the legalization of adult use of cannabis. As you know, this has been an issue now for about 6 years, and every year we seem to get a little closer to putting it over the goal line. And it is a priority of House Democrats. It is not about revenue, folks. I hear it's a revenue grab. I could care less, as I said this, if it brings in $1 or $20 million. It's not going to balance our budget by legalizing this solely. At the end of the day, there's a lot of reasons why legalization makes sense. Number one, it's legal in neighboring states, and more neighboring states are set to join soon. You cannot fortify your border. Folks literally take something called the car, and they drive in their car, and they buy it, and they bring it back. We've also decriminalized the possession of small amounts of marijuana, which you would have for, say, adult use. So they are not only going across the border, they're coming back at their homes and using it safely. Number three, getting rid of bad products, tainted products. I've seen overdoses in Hartford, maybe not from marijuana, but from other drugs. And there's always a concern. This is a very controlled supply with scientists and medical experts, as opposed to what you might find on the street. And number four, it's decades and decades of frustration about how drug use has been criminalized in some areas, and other areas people have simply turned, there's a busy street, by the way, turned a blind eye. So it's about equity and social justice. The other thing I want to say before I turn it over to Jason and then Mike, and we'll take any questions, is we think we will get close to the votes, but I think it'll be a very, very close vote in the House. I do not think we'll be in the 90s, and I'm not sure we'll be in the 80s. But if we do not have the votes and I'm not raising the white flag, I want to be very clear. We will put something on the board to put to the voters of the state of Connecticut to amend the state constitution to legalize marijuana. That is how it's been legalized in almost every single state except one. And I know it frustrates people because they say that could take as long as 2 to 4 years. But if we had done this 2 years ago, we'd only be 2 years away. So the number one priority is to legalize it, with the legislature doing it, with Mike's bill, with Steve Stastrom's bill, the work that they've done. But let me be clear, if we cannot get there, we will begin to set the process in place and in motion to put it to the voters of the state of Connecticut, who I believe will overwhelmingly approve this. This is one example where the legislature is frankly more conservative than Connecticut voters. And with that, I'll turn it over to our Majority Leader. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Speaker Ritter. I guess I need to get a little taller here. But, thank you all for being here today. And as Speaker Ritter alluded to, listen, this is not the most pressing issue we're facing as a state. Perhaps it's the most nagging one. Given where voters are in terms of support for legalized cannabis, as Speaker Ritter noted, we're a bit more conservative than that. Revenue is one piece of this, but it's not the most important piece. But it is money that's being left on the table. And as a legislature, we have to make a decision about whether we want to prioritize this and make it happen the way that states around us are making it happen or not. And certainly I want to congratulate Representative D'Agostino on his reappointment to the chairmanship. I think having his institutional knowledge at the table again will help us get there. I know I've been involved, I'm the immediate past chairman of the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee. So I've been involved in a process for the last couple of years of articulating a policy for us around legalized cannabis. But we've often been late with getting out a fully articulated bill. I think we need to have a bill that's ready from day one so that we can go to our members who are a bit skeptical about this policy, so that we can arm them with the best information possible and a vision for it. We're standing here in front of Connecticut Farmer, part of our medical cannabis system, and it's proof that a well-regulated, well-articulated system can work in the state of Connecticut, and I think we can do it for legalized adult use cannabis as well. So I look forward to getting to work and to getting the votes that we need to get this passed here for the state so that we can join Massachusetts and now New Jersey and New York and Rhode Island will be there very soon around having a legalized system for adult use cannabis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader, for your confidence in me and reappointing me to the General Law Chairmanship. I want to thank Connecticut Pharmaceutical Solutions for hosting us here at this tremendous new facility, more than 200,000 square feet that they've got here for production. I want to thank them and also all the other growers who are the members of the Connecticut Medical Cannabis Council in Connecticut. They've been partners in this for almost a decade now. The medical cannabis industry in Connecticut is a decade old, and it is thriving. It is a model for the rest of the country. And the reason we're here today is to further highlight the fact that the foundation exists for adult use cannabis in Connecticut. The production facilities exist. The distribution facilities exist. The regulatory structure exists. A bill is drafted from last session. We are ready to go. So if the legislature shows the will to pass this year, we can be up and running by the end of next year. And from there, it will be easy to bolt onto that opportunities for everyone. If people want to get into the distribution facilities, if people want to get into the grow facilities, if people want to work in that retail environment, the secure retail environments that we already have in Connecticut, those opportunities will be there. This is about opportunity. It is about, as the speaker said, reversing decades of a racist system that punished people overwhelmingly in our cities and in minority communities. It's time to reverse all of that and join the rest of our neighboring states in legalizing adult use cannabis. Again, Connecticut's been a leader in the medical environment. We are ready to take another leading role in the adult use field as well. So thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader. Thank you, Connecticut Pharmaceutical Solutions, for having us here. We're happy to take any questions.
Why should this be on the agenda this year when you have so much, to discuss regarding, COVID and public health and budget deficits? Like, why does this rise to the top?
I think Jason said it best. No one's saying it's the number one issue of the session, but the reality is we've been debating it for 4 or 5 years, and you are surrounded by states that are going through a process. As the governor has said during COVID, quite frankly, we work better when we work cooperatively as neighbors, when we have consistent rules. It's someone whose time has come. And at the end of the day, speaking of the Republicans, where are my libertarian Republican friends? Where are they? Where are they? So if they're not willing to vote for legalization, are they at least willing to put it to the voters? I would be really surprised if we didn't get some yeses out of both of those questions this year, I hope.
I think the only thing I'd add to that, Christine, is if not now, when? I mean, I could make that argument every year, every session. We're ready to go. If not now, when?
So, for purposes of the session, we're going to have 2 bills. The main bill out of Judicial General Law, and then a constitutional amendment bill also?
I think that will not be our number one priority. But again, if we are unable, which again, we're not waving the white flag. I think part of our job in leadership is to give our members options, because when you don't have options, you end up with nothing. Is to think through a double-barrel strategy. The first strategy is to use the bills we've had that have been worked out with the House and Senate in previous years. The second strategy would be to have a constitutional amendment. If we get the right number, it could be voted on as early as 2022. Worst case scenario is 2024, probably. Yeah.
So what remains the opposition? Do you just have lawmakers who are flat out against legalization and others who are not willing to go beyond decriminalization for any amount of money?
Yeah, it's a diverse body of legislators, and there's a lot of differences of opinion. I mean, it ranges from just straight up opposition to it for all sorts of reasons. There's concerned about the impact on youth and the kind of message that it sends to youth. There are some who believe the impact on brain development should be taken into consideration, and therefore the age should be 25 for adult use. So, it's a complicated issue, like many of the issues that we face at the Capitol, and we have to work through all the differing opinions that are there. We certainly had some legislators leave the legislature who were opposed. Perhaps we've picked up some, and I've started talking to all our new members too about where they are on this issue and a lot of issues. And we have some folks who will be on board with us who are new. There are some folks who are new and have questions already about it, and I think we just have to work through all those concerns.
What about any Republican support, Mike? Do you know of any Republican support for legalization?
I think as the speaker mentioned, we're trying to appeal to a number of different constituencies here, and that includes, frankly, our more libertarian-leaning members of the Republican Party who would say, hey, this is free market. It's a robust market right now in the medical field. Why not let that free market and individual choice take over with respect to adult use? And we think that there'll be some appeal on the Republican side of the aisle for that.
But no Republican support as we stand here today.
Not that I'm aware of, but
Okay.
I think it's early in the session. We haven't even gotten in session yet. So.
We generally don't vote count.
I think that the hard part too, right, is the only street in Rocky Hill that allow trucks, this one, and buses. But I think the hard part is when Connecticut, about 6 years ago, Connecticut would have been first. And we would have been an island unto ourselves. And some of the arguments that folks made at the time, I do think carried more weight if you were going to be by yourself and that's what you believed. I think now as you see New Jersey, Massachusetts, New York, and Rhode Island eventually, those arguments just seem to me to be less intellectually appropriate when you can just drive 40 miles away or 20 minutes away and purchase it. I mean, I think that is where I think you're getting more people to yes, is how widespread it's become in other states.
And Mike and Jason, have either of you, both of you, read the econ report that talked about revenue? Do you buy that large amount of money?
No.
Right. Maybe not at first, but I think again you're talking about developing an industry and expanding it. I think it's reasonable to suggest revenue in the low tens of millions in the first couple of years, and then it expands from there. Remember, there's other pieces of this we're talking about as well. It's not just revenue to the state, but I think it's very likely at the end of the day the final bill is going to have a piece to encourage municipalities to have a percentage of the revenue as well. So all that's going to have a trickle-down effect. I don't think you can just look at this from a point of view of just the intake revenue. It's the jobs, it's on the municipal side, it's the other pieces of the industry that'll bolt on to that, with product development. So I think there's the opportunity for that type of revenue 5-10 years from now.
Did last year's bill have address the municipalities hosting similar to the Massachusetts bill or not? It did?
So we looked at this from a couple of perspectives in terms of municipalities. A financial incentive, which I do expect to be repeated in the final bill here as well. But also at the end of the day, Connecticut, we guard our local control very seriously. We were not going to overrule local ordinances as well. If a municipality decides that it does not want to have a production facility, a distribution facility in their town, they can elect to do that. There are obviously, though, plenty of reasons why. Look at what we've got here, an incredible 200,000 plus square foot facility in Rocky Hill. The town is benefiting from that. It employs more than 100 people. We think that the incentives will outweigh that, but at the end of the day, we will not overrule local control.
Is it possible that municipalities that don't host any such facility would get a piece of this revenue? I'm just thinking, would you spread it around or would you create incentives for hosting?
That's a great question. And I want to just touch on that briefly because I remember the last time we discussed this, there were a number of articles about how the money is just going to go to the cities. Hartford and New Haven are going to get all the revenue from that. That is not true, okay? On the front end, just like we talked about, there's going to be incentives, obviously, from a tax and a revenue standpoint and an employment standpoint for municipalities to host either production, retail, distribution facilities. On the back end, what we are talking about is a very thoughtful structure where the revenue from the cannabis industry goes to different buckets. It goes to education and prevention of drug abuse. It goes to dedicated streams to communities that have been impacted seriously by the war on drugs, and we use census tract data to do that. It's not just a blank check to a city. It goes to particular neighborhoods, and that could be anywhere from Hamden to Hartford. All right? So we are looking at this from multiple revenue streams going back into the state of Connecticut, not just a check here or a check there.
A recent news briefing hosted by House Democrats in the General Assembly in Hartford. For further information, call us at 860-346-1049. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of this station. I'm Paul Kretschmer on the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 WIHS.